This is Research Like a Pro, episode 52, Using Your DNA Results, 4 Simple Steps. Welcome to Research Like a Pro, a genealogy podcast about taking your research to the next level, hosted by Nicole Dyer and Diana Elder, accredited genealogy professional. Diana and Nicole are the mother-daughter team at FamilyLocket.com and the creators of the Amazon best-selling book, Research Like a Pro, A Genealogist's Guide. I'm Nicole, co-host of the podcast. Join Diana and me as we discuss how to stay organized, make progress in our research, and solve difficult cases. Let's go. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm Nicole Dyer, co-host of the Research Like a Pro Genealogy podcast. I'm here with accredited genealogist Diana Elder. Hi, Diana. How are you today?
Hi, Nicole. So fun to be here again on the podcast. Always a pleasure. And today we get to talk about DNA again and using our results. So we're excited about that. And our genetic genealogist, Robin, is here with us today. Hi, Robin. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. So excited to be here.
Thanks for being here again. So today our listener spotlight is from The Fabe. And this person said, "This is an excellent podcast. I get loads of information and it is easy to listen to. Informative without being boring. Plus, the resources are phenomenal." Thank you. I'm glad we're not boring. And I'm glad that you mentioned the resources. We have a few episodes where we have handouts or downloads or things. And we always link to blog posts and other helpful resources as well. So thanks for pointing that out. That was a fun listener spotlight.
We love all of our comments and emails and things from our listeners. We feel like you're all our best friends. It's so great. So today we are talking about using your DNA results, and we have 4 simple steps. So I am going to ask Robin the big question. Now that you've taken your DNA test, what do you do with it?
That is a great question. I know it can be really daunting when you look at the results and then you get kind of flooded and you don't know where to go. So we're going to attempt to give some step-by-step instructions so that you can really utilize things to the maximum. So first of all, review your DNA match list for names that you recognize. You may see a cousin that you know of. You may see someone who's even closer, and maybe someone that you aren't in contact every day with, but you know who they are. That's great. And then write down that relationship that you share in the notes section of the testing company, especially if they are like great Aunt Matilda's granddaughter. You definitely want to have a quick reference to be able to jog your memory. Oh, this is who this person is, and we are second cousins or first cousins once removed. Just write that relationship down.
Yeah, that's really important. I did kind of a dumb thing a while ago. I was going back through my matches, and obviously I hadn't done this yet. And I messaged one of my close matches and I said, "Hi," and gave my spiel. "Who is this?" And she messaged back, "This is your cousin, Teresa." I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I forgot." Because she has a bunch of different letters for her username, and I didn't recognize it. It is really good once you figure out a relationship to get those notes in there. I have noticed I've been kind of poring over my results lately in conjunction with the project, and I've been noticing that I have not been very consistent with how I entered information. So I've been trying to go back and be a little bit more consistent, having a format that I do it, who's the most recent common ancestor, and then showing right there their line back to that ancestor. When I started off, I'd say, "Oh, this is the 4th cousin," and blah, blah, blah. And I'm trying to be more consistent so that I know what I'm doing. It gives me a kind of a protocol. Do you have a protocol that you do for your notes, Robin?
I do. I write out the amount of DNA shared and the relationship, and then I write the pathway back to the common ancestor. So I write that DNA matches name, and then I use a little caret sign that's just above the period on the keyboard. And then I put the parents of that DNA match, and then do another caret sign and do the parents of them going back in time so that I can immediately see how they connect. And I think it makes your research more efficient. You don't get discouraged as easily because you can say, oh, this is it quickly, instead of, oh, why did I not do that? It's kind of a waste of your energy.
I completely agree. So I like the idea of doing the parents. I've been doing, I guess, the man. I'm not sure who I've been doing. I've just been doing one. So you recommend doing each parent couple as you go back?
Well, I do, but if it's several generations back, then sometimes I do just the direct descendant. But it can be helpful as you are trying to tie in other cousins, and they may match at a closer in time level than that ancestor that you're seeking.
Yeah, I can see different ways you could do that. And each company has a way to do the notes, right? Because last episode we talked about the different testing company, and each company is a little bit different. So if we find a cousin, say on Ancestry, and then that same cousin is over on Family Tree and DNA, we could just copy and paste our notes from one to the other if we determine it's the same, if we're that efficient, right?
Yeah, I think it's just really important to record what you are seeing and what you know is going on, because different things in life take us away from the research. And, you may be having a really A game one day and then come back for whatever reason, health or family, you've been pulled away for a couple months, and then you've got to come back and refigure out, who was this person again? So you want it to be clear and concise. I mean, it's kind of in a way a research log, or you're recording some of your results or analysis there in the DNA testing company so that it's handy and easy to look at.
Great. I am just going to throw a quick question out here to you also. Do you do a spreadsheet of your different matches? I know a lot of people have these really complicated spreadsheets of all their matches, and I started one, but then new people keep popping up and it became kind of overwhelming. And I'm wondering if it's just as good to keep it just on the testing company.
Well, spreadsheets are a great way to keep track of your matches. And a lot of the tools that you use with DNA are utilized with spreadsheets in some form or another. I started making a lucid chart of my matches. I am a visual learner and I like to see things written out so that I can see, oh, here's how these different people fit. And I've had a few cousins who were placed for adoption, and having that chart helps me to be better able to fit them into the family tree in a shorter amount of time.
I love that idea. I'm totally going to do that. So tell me, have you organized your Lucid chart?
So I would put my dad's side off to the left, my mom's side off to the right, kind of like I'm doing a vertical pedigree chart.
So you have everybody all together in one chart. And I'm guessing this is your closer matches.
Right. It is the closer matches. I mean, like you said, sometimes people have a very unique username, and it's helpful to know where they fit into the tree and to have that visual.
And also, when you get those people that you can't figure out who don't respond to you, if you see in common with matches who else they are in common with, maybe that can help you put them on and hypothesize where they are on the family tree. So I can see how a chart for me would be much more helpful than a spreadsheet, I think. Interesting. I'm so glad you said that. I'm excited to try that out now.
Yeah, and another way that people keep track of those matches is to put them into a family tree. Ancestry has fantastic tree building capabilities, and a lot of people do write their DNA matches into the tree, and having even some freestanding branches that can be connected in as time goes on, and they learn more about how those people that are their matches connect into the family tree.
And Ancestry has those tags now. So I've seen a lot of people tagging people as a DNA match. So you could make notes right on the tree about who they are or, a hypothesis. So yeah, that's a great idea too.
I love the new colored dots and the new ways that Ancestry has made their match lists really a lot easier to access the information and to see it at a glance rather than having to click through to different screens. It's really fantastic.
Okay, well, I think we've covered lots of good ideas for step number 1, which was to review your DNA matches for names you recognize. And with so many people testing now, I would guess that you would have several matches now of people you actually recognize, and I'm looking at my DNA matches, and I've got my mother, I've got Nicole, I've got some nieces and nephews and cousins, and it's fun because when I first started, my close matches were people I had no idea. And now with so many people having taken the test, we really do know a lot of our matches. So what's our next thing we're going to talk about? That's step number 1, review DNA matches for names you recognize.
All right. So, what is step number 2? What do you do with your DNA results, Robin?
So you check the amount of shared DNA. How much DNA do you share with each match? The amount of DNA that you share is shown in centimorgans at Ancestry DNA, Family Tree DNA, and MyHeritage. And then percentages shared are shown at 23andMe and MyHeritage. And basically, the more DNA you share, the closer the relationship. And the testing company will give you an estimate of the relationship, but there are usually multiple relationships that can be represented by that amount of organs or percentage of shared DNA.
Great.
All right, so step number 3. So we've looked at our DNA matches for names we recognize. We've checked the amount of shared DNA. So what is the next thing that we can do?
The next thing to do is, like I said, you may have multiple relationships that can be represented by the amount of DNA that you share. So you need to calculate those relationships. The best tool that I've come across is the Shared Centimorgan Project tool on DNA Painter. That is dnapainter.com/tools/shared CMV4. And that will help you see what possible relationships that you might share with that match. You can get to it pretty easily from the homepage of dnapainter.com. This tool is an amazing collaboration from the creator of DNA Painter, Jonny Perl, Blaine Bettinger, who did the Shared Centimorgan project, and Leah Larkin, the DNAgeek.com, who works with the probabilities. It gives you this statistical likelihood of people falling into a certain relationship. So you can put in the number of centimorgans or the percentage, and then it will show you in a graphic the possible relationships that you share with that DNA match.
I love DNA Painter. When that first came out and the shared centimorgan tool, it was like the most amazing thing ever. I used it, interestingly enough, when I was doing my sister's adoptee case, and this was before they did the upgrade and had a bunch more people add their information. And some of her closest matches, none of the suggested relationships worked. It was like a 0% chance. But I knew that it had to be correct. It was just one of those interesting things where she was an outlier. Their connection was an outlier. It was one of those crazy connections, like half third cousin twice removed, one of those that's pretty complicated. And it had just not been reported before as a possible connection with that much DNA shared. So I think we also have to remember that we may have more DNA or less DNA than is the average. And it gives us a percentage, right, of the possibility. But like with my sister's case, she was in the 0%, and it turned out to be the correct relationship. But it's still such a great help to give us ideas and help us hypothesize when we're trying to figure out connections.
I know you can read more if you really look on that page. You can read more about the Shared Centimorgan project, and you can see the histograms that were created. And yes, some people kind of fell into a bell curve, and then there are outliers. So, the person that you're looking at may be in a relationship that's an outlier. I guess the best thing is to go through for the most likely relationships first and then look at the outliers, because you're more likely to get something that will fall in the middle of there. But it sounds like you did a lot of great research to really drill down and figure things out.
Exactly, I did, and the funny thing was I was discounting. It had stymied me, to be quite honest. I was really kind of stymied because I kept looking at it and thinking it has to be this connection, but it's 0%. And then my sister did 23andMe test, and that showed up her half sister. And so then it all came together because I realized, yeah, I was right. I was exactly right. It just was the outlier. And so we were able to prove the whole thing. I guess it was good that I started off with something like that. I mean, this is the story of my life, starting with the really hard genealogy, starting with the hard DNA stuff that doesn't fall in the expected patterns.
True. And you really learn a lot as you're trying to turn that problem around and examine it from all the different sides. You brought up a great point about how she tested with another testing company. It's really important to have your DNA in each testing company or each database that you are able to put it in, because you will get matches with people who have only tested at one testing company, and they could be the key to unlocking the door to finding the solution.
Absolutely. I can testify to that for sure with that case. Let's just review where we are so far in our steps. We have reviewing the DNA matches for names we recognize, then checking the amount of shared DNA, and then calculating possible relationships with that shared Centimorgan Project tool.
So, Robin, what is step number 4?
Number 4 is to contact your DNA matches. If you don't recognize the name of your DNA match, you can write to them and ask them to help you figure out the common ancestor that you share. A really simple example of this is my grandfather's parents died when they were young, and all the children were separated to live with other relatives or on their own during the Great Depression. So all of the descendants of that family who are living today are mostly unknown to me. And I have connected with some of them through the DNA company messaging features. And in one case, my previously unknown cousin lives here in the same state as I do. And she and I have become friends, and it's been an amazing connection. And she really helped us figure out a lot of a family mystery. She was descended from the oldest daughter of that family, and my grandfather was one of the youngest children. And so she knew information that I didn't know, and plus she's a fantastic genealogist, so that was a really great connection.
Wow, how fun to meet a cousin that you have so much in common with.
It was amazing. We both said that was providential.
So, are you second
We are
cousins?
second cousins. We share great grandparents, and my grandfather and her grandmother are brother and sister.
That's so neat. It seems like the women in the family who are like the older daughters seem to inherit more family memorabilia, photos, information.
I completely agree with that. I can see that in my own family. I even see that in my own self, as my sister and I have been helping my mom go through things. I'm the oldest daughter, and
Right.
I see the value in some of the historical records she's got. So, an easy way to write to the person is to say, like, hello, this DNA testing company says that we share this amount of DNA. And that puts us in the range of second to third cousins. I would love to connect with you and figure out our common ancestor. I have family history information that I would love to share with you. You can contact me through the DNA company messaging system or via email. I give my email address, and I look forward to hearing from you. It can be even simpler than that. I mean, maybe you don't have any family history information to share with a person, and that's fine. But just wanting to connect and, just basically putting your goodwill out there saying, I'd love to connect with you and learn more about the family.
I love that. I think that's a really good way to start messaging people if you're not sure what to say. And just having that template written out will make it so much easier to just copy and paste every time you need to message one of your matches. And you can just message 100 and see what you get
That's a
back.
good point. I help a friend with her genealogy, and sometimes I write the messages in her messaging system. And so we were laughing about how her messages are different than my messages. So it really doesn't matter what you're writing, it's just a matter of trying to make a connection. And hopefully, you can make a connection that will possibly become a friend or someone that you can swap family history information or enthusiasm with.
So I have a question then. If you are just wanting to use your DNA results to help you solve your genealogy brick walls, why should you contact your closer cousins? What will that help you with in the future?
Well, first of all, you're making connections and building a relationship with people and letting them know that you're interested in genealogy. So there's value in that, in connecting with your close cousins. And then, even a little farther distant, maybe those people have some things that were passed down or inherited to that branch of the family that your branch of the family didn't get. I guess that's the biggest value in connecting with close cousins. And then with those more distant cousins, it can help you figure out those common ancestors. And perhaps one of those cousins knows more about the family history than you do. And they can say, oh, well, I know who Martha Stiles' parents are. And I've got all this research. And so they can share with you maybe a generation back from a brick wall. I know my mom worked to figure out who Martha Stiles' parents were for many, many years. And then I went to a seminar in Boston, and one of the genealogists from the New England Historical and Genealogical Society said, why don't you check this website? And I checked it, and there were her parents. It was amazing. Their information may be out there. It's just that you don't know what it is. And so you're on a search. You're the detective trying to search and find information. And you are using DNA as one of those tools to help you locate information about your ancestors.
I love that answer. That makes so much sense. When I first started using DNA results a few years ago, I didn't really know how most of the close cousins were related to me, but I just kind of wanted to skip over all of them and then just go back to those cousin matches who were about fifth cousins. And I was hoping that, I could use their pedigree charts to help me find an ancestor that wasn't in my family tree yet. And I've since realized that I cannot really learn much from my further away matches until I've got my closer up matches really nailed down and figuring out who they are. It's kind of like trying to build a pedigree chart, but you skip a bunch of generations and you just go back to like the fourth great grandparents, right? It's not going to work very well. But I've kind of learned that the same thing applies to when you do your DNA research. You've got to figure out how your close cousins are related to you before you can expand back to your more distant cousins.
Yeah, it's a really great point. It's like you don't want to start from George Washington and try to figure out who his descendants are and how you're related, because yeah, it does make sense to solidify those more recent relatives. The other thing is they may have some photographs that you don't even have, or they may have photographs of even your parents or your grandparents that you've never seen before. Like, for example, my great grandparents who died young and the children were dispersed during the Depression, I only ever saw a round cutout of their faces on a family group sheet. But when I connected with a closer cousin, she had the full wedding photo that I had never seen before. And it was remarkable.
That is remarkable. Yeah, we have a lot of pictures like that where you can tell that they're taken from a larger photo and you just wonder who has the original. I wish I could see the original photo. So that is a really good reason to contact the cousins. And I think it's just a great way to get started. Like this whole podcast has been about just some of the very first and basic steps that you can do when you get your results back. And contacting those DNA matches will be something that you'll do all throughout your journey at the beginning, middle, and as you become more advanced, because you're always getting new matches. And it is really important to figure out who they are and who their parents are so that, even if they don't have a pedigree, you can build their pedigree and you can learn about how they might fit in with your own family tree. So it's a good skill to have. And I love your template for contacting them.
So another great point that we are touching upon here, and a reason to connect with your close cousins, is that we want to begin to separate out these cousins into groups or genetic networks so that we can see how these different people relate back to certain common ancestors. And forthcoming, we'll be talking more about how to separate out your cousins into different groups. But that's the key to figuring out the unknown ancestors.
Yeah, that's really true. And I think that was something I was missing early on in my DNA research, is that I wasn't able to make very good groups because I didn't know how a lot of those cousins were related. So now that I've contacted a bunch of them and I've got them sorted into groups, I can start to see those cousin matches who are in the genetic network, but I don't know how they're related, and start to hypothesize that, they may have this ancestor in common with me who I don't know how I'm related to that ancestor yet. And so, yeah, you can see how these genetic networks are going to help us start breaking down brick walls. And they all start with contacting your cousin
Exactly.
matches.
I've just been sitting here thinking also that back in the day, people wrote letters and they kind of kept, well, in some families, my dad did, he would write the aunts and say, who are all the children in the family, And nowadays we don't tend to do that as much, or at least I don't do that as much. And so it's been really fun to have these DNA matches pop up that when I contact them, I find out that they are the descendant of this aunt that I knew really well. And I just didn't know about them. And we can build our family tree with all these cousins and keep those connections. So if we wanted to do family reunions or, like you say, compare things, it's really helping us in so many ways to have this DNA, because we tend to feel like we have this very connected society with all the social media, but in reality, I don't think we connect as well with our families as we used to, because we're all so busy in our lives. Anyway, those are my thoughts on this whole thing. I just have to say, too, that I used your message yesterday as I was working on my Cox DNA project and sent it out to 20 cousins. And it was so great to have that little template. And I had added like some special information to it, and it made it really easy to just message everybody within like 15
That's
minutes. I had
fantastic.
messaged everybody I wanted to. So
I'm thrilled. That way you don't have to come up with something new to say. That's fantastic. I'm so happy that could help. As we go through this whole process, I think just sometimes it can be so overwhelming. And if you have some steps to take, then you can say, I'm going to focus on this step, I'll get this done, and then I'll move on to the next step, rather than looking at it as a whole large project to complete.
absolutely. And I love steps. And, this is the Research Like a Pro genealogy podcast. And we started this because I determined steps for regular genealogy, do this and then do this and do this, which has been so incredibly helpful for so many people. And I think we can do the same thing with DNA. Do this step. So here's just a recap in closing our episode out for today. Step number 1, review the DNA matches for names you recognize. Step number 2, check the amount of shared DNA. Step number 3, calculate possible relationships with the Shared Centimorgan Project tool. And step 4, contact DNA matches. So if any of our listeners have been thinking, what should I do next? There you go. We have laid that out. Robin has defined some steps for us to do. And I can testify that I have been doing these steps, and it has made me feel so much more in control of my DNA results rather than feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling like I've got this process. So it's pretty exciting. Thank you, Robin.
You're welcome. I'm excited. I'm excited for everyone out there, for them to make their own progress and to make sense of it, and to have a stepwise fashion so that they can use this tool to the fullest.
Well, thank you. That was a great episode. And if you didn't listen to our last episode about using your DNA results, then go back and listen to that one, which was our first episode with Robin, episode 51. And you'll gain a lot from that one as well. Well, that wraps up today's episode. So we hope you have a great week, and we will talk to you guys again
Bye-bye,
soon.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Research Like a Pro with Diana Elder, accredited genealogy professional, and Nicole Dyer. We hope that something you heard today will help you make progress in your own genealogy research. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher, or visit our website, familylocket.com, to contact us. You can find our book, Research Like a Pro, A Genealogist's Guide, on Amazon.com and other booksellers. We hope you'll start now to research like a pro